very happy and most privileged to be part of this grand opening of the Danish-Ghana Business Conference and to speak on a subject that is gaining relatively greater attention in our conversation with our development partners. The subject is Ghana Beyond Aid, Moving Forward Together. The President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has spoken on this subject, signaling his aspiration and Ghana's aspiration to change the status quo and our conversation around aid. He has been clear that while we acknowledge that overseas development assistance will continue to contribute to our development process, we as Ghanaians, home and abroad, must be leading investors if we are to achieve a sustainable development path. I spoke on this subject on October 18th at the invitation of development partners. Our aspirations to move Ghana beyond aid was echoed by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, when he presented the 2018 budget now before Parliament for debate. We are focused on this conversation and what government has been doing in the past 11 months to demonstrate our commitment for change. Today I'll speak briefly on 4 things. First, I reiterate some few points from my October 18th remarks during our meeting with development partners. Second, expand on our vision of Ghana Beyond Aid as articulated in the 2018 budget, and highlight our consistency and purpose in the search for pathways. Third, list some of the key initiatives to build a platform to intensify domestic resource mobilization, and finally, identify what we can do together as partners to move Ghana beyond aid. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in my October 18th presentation to development partners, I highlighted the following. First, that development aid was born out of the need to accelerate post-colonial development. Aid, that is grants, loans, and project and technical assistance, was to help fill the gap, the savings investment gap, the technical capacity gaps, and the development finance gaps in order to promote growth and development. Development assistance was born. It has been a long road since. Aid has become an integral part of development partnership with varying impact across countries. For many recipient countries, weaning themselves off what was intended to fill the savings investment gap has not been easy. For Ghana, until the mid-1960s, aid inflows were relatively unimportant, but would change over time. A proxy measure of the country's dependency on aid is the total net overseas development assistance divided by the country's population. That is the ODA per capita. And it was in 1960, it amounted to $1.4, rising to $19 by 1970, and to $21 by 1980, and $64 per capita by 2011. The importance of aid to development of Ghana over the past 50 years is well documented. Much about what aid has done or not done and the challenges that face those who give and the intended beneficiaries are also well known. But there is a changing landscape on how far we can continue to depend on the generosity of development partners to build resilient economies. The writing has been on the wall since the Monterey Consensus on Development Financing in 2002, followed by the Doha pledges subsequently. The pledge to scale up commitment to finance the MDGs fell short of expectations. Admittedly, not ill intent. By 2012, 3 years before the end of the MDG timeline, only 7 out of 24 OECD members had met their commitment. Only 7 out of 24. And I'm glad to say one of the 7 was Denmark. If financing the 8 MDGs became a challenge, the financing of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is expected to even pose greater challenges. Like the MDGs, success of the SDGs depend on countries agreeing on broad policies on financing. And particularly for Africa, success depends on systemic issues which emerged at the 3rd Financing for Development meeting held in July 2015, ahead of the September launch of the SDG. The theme of domestic resource mobilization has emerged as the recurrent theme, and it gathered a great deal of momentum. The financing needs for the SDGs are enormous. Some believe that global public and private savings would be sufficient to finance the new development aspirations. But that hope is not new. The same expectations were held out for the MDGs. From Gleneagles in Scotland in 2005 to the G8 meeting in Germany in 2007, the reality did not match the ambition for a number of reasons, partly because of the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, and the ensuing fiscal challenges faced by many traditional OECD partners, and partly because of the changing views of citizens of donor countries about the success of aid. It is all too evident, ladies and gentlemen, that current financial flows and investment patterns, certainly in Africa, are not likely to deliver on the financing needed to attain sustainable development needs. For Ghana, again, the infrastructural and human development investment needs are substantial. It is the President's firm belief that we need an innovative and integrated policy framework that mobilizes and effectively uses all sources of finance, public, private, domestic, and external, to be the pathway to financing our development. As was just quoted by Minister Lunn, the President said, we want to build a Ghana which looks to use its own resources and their proper management as the way to engineer social and economic growth in our country. However challenging, however daunting the task, we must start now. Fortunately, much of the elements we need are inherent in the SDGs and are echoes of what were required for the MDGs. An enabling domestic environment, including good governance, sound economic policies, solid democratic institutions, rule of law, and sound national policy strategies. These are also the tenets of the government led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So what do we mean by a Ghana beyond aid? A Ghana beyond aid means mobilizing and leveraging domestic savings and revenues transparently, expanding financial inclusion with credit services and saving systems for all, especially women, and financing through local capital markets in local currencies. It also means where domestic resource mobilization is enhanced through higher private savings and higher government revenues raised in a more efficient and equitable manner, where there is resolute efficiency and accountability in the use of public resources. It means investing in people and building the capacity of the next generation of citizens, including access to quality education, to building their overall capacity for innovation and knowledge. It also means encouraging entrepreneurs, small businesses, private investment, and innovation. And it is these particular this vision and these building blocks that we seek to put in place that have driven the policies of our government since assuming office about 11 months ago. We assumed office at a time where our economy was facing challenges, but we set clear vision to say that we need to promote the private sector. We need to improve the business environment. If you look at what we are trying to do, if you want to move beyond aid, it means necessarily that you must focus on trade and investment. If you're moving beyond aid, then it is to trade and investment. And that is essentially what we are trying to do. And so, in moving to trade and investment, you want to set the business environment that will allow you to do exactly that. Without that, a conducive business environment, you are not going to make it. And this is why we set about very quickly trying to make sure that the macro economy is stable. Fiscal consolidation meant that we were bringing down the deficit. We've reduced the deficit from 9.34% last year. We're coming down to 6.3% this year, and next year we hope to get to 4.5%. So we will have the deficit in 2 years, basically, and in so doing, this is very, very significant. And this is much more than government was spending on domestic capital this year. This is one private sector investment. And this is exactly what we are talking about. If the environment is conducive, if the structuring is right, the private sector can actually lead the whole investment drive to what we are trying to do. We are also realizing that to get the private sector to move, to get a conducive business environment, you not only have to stabilize the macro economy, you also have to formalize the economy. So a chaotic economy, an informal economy, is not one where the private sector can really thrive, unless you are only looking at digging up gold and drilling oil. That is very easy. That can even survive in war. But if you are looking for systemic or systematic private sector investment, you need a more formalized economic system. And this is why we are embarked on a digitalization of the Ghanaian economy. There's a digital transformation going on as we speak. We are going to issue national ID cards with facial, iris, and biometric identification for everybody in Ghana, unique, whether you are foreign or local or indigenous Ghanaian, you are going to be uniquely identified. We've launched a digital property address system, which means every 5 by 5 square meter of Ghana today has a unique digital property address. So you can find everybody and find every business. It opens up the space for e-commerce and so on. We've digitalized the issue of driver's licenses and vehicle registration. We've digitalized the registration of businesses. Today, you can register your business in Ghana online, even from Denmark. You can register, and it will take you within 48 hours to do so. So we are moving to formalization of the economy. There's going to be launched in either next month or the month or in January an interoperability of the domestic payment system between the banks and the mobile companies, so that you will have financial inclusion across the country. We've moved quickly to recognize that as a country, we have to move with agric and industry supported by infrastructure development. So the government is investing and promoting investment in agriculture, and we are seeing the results already this year. We've launched our One District, One Factory program to encourage investment across the length and breadth of Ghana to use our resources. And the Minister of Trade was talking about that. We also, learning from countries such as Denmark, know that fundamentally to build productive capacity that the private sector is going to rely on, you need to have an educated population. You need to have an educated workforce. We know about the free education in Denmark, and we have also implemented this year free secondary school education for Ghanaians going forward. And that is very, very important in building the type of knowledge economy that we want to build. So we are very, very optimistic going forward about Ghana. There is a lot that is, the possibilities for me are endless. If we all put our minds to it, the private-public partnership frameworks are being put together, and we believe that the sky really is the limit if we put our acts together.